In this lesson, I'm going to explain a key strategy for the reading test called mapping before reading. I know it sounds like extra work, but actually, it's a surefire way to save you precious time during the test. You can think of mapping before reading like packing before camping. Being comfortable while you camp totally depends on how you pack and organize before you go. Now, if you're like me, you don't exactly love packing. So, let's imagine that you decide to just wing it this time. You throw a bunch of gear in a bag the morning of, and you charge out to your campsite. When you arrive, you realize you've left your tent and your can opener behind. So now you're forced to feed on mystery berries and snuggle with Gretchen the Grizzly just to survive the night. Wouldn't it have been a little easier if you just did some prep work before you trekked into the great outdoors? On the SAT, the practice of organizing and prepping before you dive into the passage will be a vital strategy. Let's start with mapping the questions. Here's what you do. Before you begin to read the passage, take a look at the line references in the questions. What are line references? See those numbers next to the passage? Those are important indicators for the questions that follow. If you know which lines are important to focus on before you even read the passage, you're preparing yourself to look for the right clues in the passage. Now, find the line references in the questions and then quickly go through the passage and mark where the questions occur. Write the question number next to the line it refers to in the passage. Remember, it isn't necessary to read the questions at this point, you're just mapping your way through the passage. Sometimes there will be more questions clustered around a particular section of the passage, so mapping the questions will actually help you prioritize your reading time by highlighting a section you'll definitely want to pay close attention to. You still want to read the portions that go on without any assigned questions, but you won't need to spend time there struggling over vocabulary words. As you read the passages, you'll also want to underline and circle important details. Not only will this help you refer back to important information quickly, but it will also help keep you actively engaged in the passage. Let's shift gears now and get into how to map the paired or double passages. You'll still want to map the questions for paired passages. The questions for passage 1 will follow the order of passage 1, and the questions for passage 2 will follow the order of passage 2. Many of the questions will ask you to compare and contrast both passages, but don't assume that paired passages will present opposing viewpoints. To speed through paired passage questions accurately, it helps to use specific marks that you can pull out on test day. For example, when you encounter paired passages, you can go through the questions and quickly mark up the passages with 1, 2, or B. 1 is for questions that pertain to the first passage, 2 is for questions that pertain to the second passage, and B is for the questions that refer to both passages. I know this sounds like it'll take forever, but it actually saves time while increasing accuracy. After you mark the questions, read passage 1 first and then answer the passage 1 questions that correspond to it. Then, read passage 2 and answer the passage 2 questions that pertain to that. This will give you more in-depth perspective on each passage individually so that you can jump into the questions that refer back to both passages. Lucky for you, you mapped the 1s, 2s, and Bs ahead of time. Well, that wraps up our section on mapping before reading. If you use this key pre-planning strategy on the test, I can promise you will end up exactly where you want to be. Although we're at the end of this lesson, your work is not done. Try solving some practice problems to solidify your learning.